Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Monday Mentor. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and really create empowered teams where work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. And today I am doing a mini workshop. I am live here every week at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you are here and you're one of my regulars, say hello in the comments. I always love hearing. And then I get these DMs later saying, I watch you every week, but you don't comment. So let me know that you are here. If you're catching the replay, fantastic. Ask your questions. I will make sure to come back and answer those if I don't get to them live today. So today I am talking about a topic that is, I think, misunderstood and probably dismissed in our culture, and particularly workplace culture. As you can see from the title, we're going to talk about why joy at work is profitable. So we're going to dig in. I'm going to help you understand what the power of joy is, because we, think like, isn't joy an add-on? Isn't joy just an extra? So we're going to dispel a few myths today and really dig into what is the profitability and why joy is profitable at work. So everybody loves an agenda. So here, boop, which way am I going? That way? That took way longer than it needed to. We're going to talk about joy at work. So the first one is the business outcomes of joy. So I'm going to give you 3 different data points to talk about why joy is actually part of a great outcome for your business. So this is if you are a team leader, if you are looking at the whole team, if you're a small business owner, here are some of those business outcomes that we care about when it comes to joy. And then we're going to talk about a joy deficit. So is joy at work actually a problem? We can talk about what's important, but is it actually an issue in the workplace? And then what actually is joy at work? I have a little equation for you to understand what joy really looks like. So if you've got questions along the way, please drop them in the comments. Hello. I will make sure that I get to them. And if I don't get to them live, I will come back and answer them in the comments or shoot you a DM, because sometimes LinkedIn's kind of funny with those comments. So if you're ready, give me a little bit of a thumbs up, because we're going to dive into the first data point on the business outcomes of joy. So we're going to talk about employee productivity. We love productivity in American workplace culture. Like, it is kind of this number one thing. We're always trying to do more with less. How do we be more productive? How do we be more efficient? Because if we're more efficient, then we spend less resources. And I'm kind of doing this because I think we overemphasize that to a point where it can be a real problem, and we don't consider the other unintended costs and consequences. But for today, we're going to talk about what employee productivity looks like around the concept of joy. So we're going to say this baseline is a satisfied employee. I want you just to imagine a satisfied employee is our 0 point. That's what our expectation of productivity is, a satisfied employee. So we hear a lot about disengagement. So a disengaged employee is 18% less productive than a satisfied employee. So sometimes if you want to put that into numbers, it's about 18 cents on every dollar, 1,080 for every $10,000 of their salary. There are differing statistics around this. Some say it's as high as 34%. But for today, we're going to go with the conservative number of 18. So 18% less productive is what happens when you have a disengaged employee. And then if you have an engaged employee, that's 44% more productive than a satisfied employee. That's pretty great. That's almost like an extra half a person that you're getting. And often this is where we stop. We're like, oh, how do I increase employee engagement? How do I do these things? Which are excellent questions, but we stop there. Because actually engagement is a little bit of short-sightedness. We want something that's even more than engaged. We want highly engaged, and highly engaged is often defined as inspired. So in this study, they looked at inspired employees. So inspired employees are 125% more productive than a satisfied employee. But let's even just look about that. If we're struggling with employee disengagement, if in the latest, like about every other week, Gallup, Forbes, HBR come out with a new number for employee disengagement, it's been as high as 50%. So 50% of your employees are disengaged. Let's look at the gap at what happens if they're disengaged versus inspired, which is where joy shows up. So here's that gap, 143%. So if you have a disengaged employee, they are 100, or if you have a disengaged employee versus an inspired employee, they're 143% more productive. They get 143% more done. So let's look at it like this. If you have a disengaged employee, they're getting a little less done. And if you have an inspired employee, it's almost an employee and a half. They're getting 143% more done than this disengaged employee. So an inspired employee is one who is highly engaged. And we're going to talk about at the end, what is that joy equation? What is that inspiration? How does the synergy work between engagement and joy? And so we're going to get there. That's the joy equation. So, but for now, understanding this big cost of productivity or this big benefit to productivity around joy. So that's the first business outcome. The second one is employee retention. We talk a lot about employee retention all the time. How do I retain employees? What do I do? How do I make sure they show up after lunch? How do I make sure they come back the next day? Or how do they not leave for another company? So when you have a highly engaged or a joyful, inspired group of people, they experience 59% less turnover. 59%, like nearly 2/3. That's an exceptional amount. When you have highly engaged or inspired or joyful employees, their level of engagement turns into employee retention rates of 59% less. So let's look at the same idea in a little bit of a different way. It costs you to create a new employee 150% of whatever their salary was. So if you have the average salary in the United States is about $60,000. So if you have a $60,000 employee, it's costing you $90,000 to replace that employee. $90,000 to replace that employee. And so we're just going to do a little more extrapolated math. If you've got this average cost employee and your company has 100 people in it, we'll just say 100 people. And the average employee turnover rate right now in the United States is about 18%. So if you have 18 people that you have to replace at this average cost, it costs your 100-member company $1.6 million a year. I don't know about you, but I could do a lot with $1.6 million. I mean, that feels really important. So employee retention is a huge outcome of understanding the joy at work and how to have more joy at work, how to create and cultivate joy at work. So first, you're going to have more employee productivity. Second, you're going to have lower employee retention and probably save at least $1.6 million a year. That's just if you have 100 people in your company. Next is profitability. So of course, it's all impacting back to here. But people who have inspired and joyful workers are 21% more profitable. 21% more profitable. So if your average, if your revenue is $5 million a year, oh gosh, I shouldn't have picked that. No, that was right. Then you have $6 million a year, 21% more profitable just by creating joy at work. That is a positive ROI in my mind. And now what we're talking about, we're just talking about the business outcomes. I mean, this is just the money. This is just the productivity. I just want you to consider for a moment, what does it feel like when you're joyful at work? When you know what you're doing, when you understand what's happening, why you're doing it, and you're joyful. That feeling is really hard to put a number on. But when you create employees like that, you have these outcomes: higher productivity, more employee retention, and greater profitability. So those are the business outcomes of joy. So is it really a problem? Is joy at work a problem in our country? So Kearley did a study and they found that we have a joy deficit happening in US workplace culture. So the expectation is 9 out of 10 people expect to be joyful at work. There's the one person that's like, no, I don't expect to have happiness at work. That's not my thing. But the majority of us, by a lot, say, I want to have joy at work. I expect that. I should enjoy my work. We spend a lot of time at work. And I'm curious if you're here in the comments, do you want to have joy at work? Just yes, I'd like to. I absolutely do. Tell me, let me know. Do you want joy at work? Do you fall into this camp of 90% of us feel like joy at work I expect to happen? So that's our expectation. What's the actual experience? So according to the study, the experience is only 37% of people actually experience joy at work. Now, you can see from our little graph here, that's a big difference. And when you look at the gap, the study called this the joy gap. It's a 53% gap between what our expectation is and what we're actually experiencing. And I'm just kind of curious if you needed a study to show you that. If you are currently experiencing joy at work and you're one of that 37%, fantastic. That's me in my current role. That did not used to be the case. And in fact, the reason I do what I do is because I had a horrible toxic experience where there wasn't joy at work. And that is why I help people create positive cultures with the complex people that we have. Because of that personal, horrible experience, I know what that joy gap feels like. And I wonder if you do too. And if you are one of the people that's experiencing joy, fantastic. Let's keep doing it. But if you're not, I feel you. And so let's talk about why that matters and what actually is joy at work. Because joy could feel like this ethereal thing. Like what is joy? Does it mean I have to be happy all the time? Does joy mean that, it's toxic positivity? Here we go, Pollyanna, and everything's fine. So what really is joy at work? If it's profitable, if joyful and inspired and highly engaged employees are 143% more productive, if they are you have 59% less turnover, that you are saving $1.5 million a year. If you've got joyful employees, you're 21% more profitable. If there is this gap around joy, what does that mean? What is joy at work? And before I get to that, I have a question for you. I really want you to consider this. And if you can't answer it in the comments right now, I'm just going to, if I can be your coach for a moment, and be your consultant and say, I want you to write this down and actually think about it. Spend 5 minutes if you don't get to it right now. But if you and your team had more joy at work, what could be possible? What does that look like tangibly? What does 143% more productive look like on your team? On my team, it looks like the ability to help more people. It looks like my newsletter going out without a lot of friction and some smoothness. It looks like creating these lovely graphics that you see around me get done in faster and better. It means more collaboration. For me, it means more creativity. I'm working on a new keynote right now as a speaker. I've got a keynote that I'm messing with and kind of doing that. And more joy means that keynote is better. It's more creative. It's more connected. It serves more people in an efficient way. That's what it means for my team, which then ultimately means, profitability. My kids get a college tuition. We get to pay our mortgage. Like some of those things are possible when I tangibly think about if I have more joy at work. So what does that mean for your team? What would it mean just for you individually? And then what could that mean for your team? Maybe you're a nonprofit in the clients that you serve, or maybe you're an agency. And what could it mean for your client relations? Or maybe you're a tech firm. And what kind of new innovation could you create if there's more joy at work? I just want you to write that in the comments and think about it. What could be possible? What could be possible if you had more joy at work based on what we've talked about so far? Okay, so here is the way I like to define joy at work. It's a bit of an equation. And so don't get confused by the math, okay? If you're the person that's like, that's not a real equation, it's going to be okay. So here is the joy equation. It is a deep connection. It is you as a person connected to something larger than yourself. So it is you as a person, a deep connection to something larger than yourself. And that's joy. That's joy at work. It's this deep connection, experiencing what that connection looks like and appreciating that connection to something larger than yourself. So I have recently, my EA has moved on. She was amazing and wonderful, and she had this great opportunity. And so she is doing that. So I'm hiring a new person. It happens to be my son, and he is going to work with me in this assistant job. And so we were working last night doing some training and going through this. And so he is Gen Z. He is like, what is this about? They're very pragmatic. They want to know why. He, in and of himself, as a personality, also wants to know why. But as we were digging in, we were kind of talking about this equation, this deep connection to something other and greater than yourself. He's not just copy pasting. Your copy pasting means this message gets to this number of people and helps them do this thing. You copy pasting changes workplace culture, creates positive culture with complex people. And your connection to that is this. His deeper connection to something greater than himself helped him change from copy paste, which, bless him. I'm so happy someone's doing that job. But it's something greater than himself. That creates joy. You have to figure out, what is the deeper thing? What is the greater connection to something larger than yourself? That's the joy equation at work. I have lots of different ways to help companies through that. How you actually work through making this a part of your leadership, explicitly putting it in your culture and in your systems. There are lots of ways to do that. But for now, for today's takeaway, I just want you to consider, what is the connection to something larger than myself? It's not just happy all the time, but it creates this intense happiness over time when you are deeply connected to something greater than yourself. That's what creates 143% more productivity than a disengaged employee. That's what creates 21% more profitability. That's what creates 59% less turnover in your life. This equation. So I send out a weekly newsletter. If you didn't get it, just say newsletter or shoot me a DM and I will make sure that I send it to you, because I talked about this last week and I gave you 3 ways on 3 different levels to actually cultivate joy, to actually work on this equation in your leadership and in your personal business and on your team. I also would love to help your team. So if you are interested, you're like, wait, I think we're ready for this. We need this. We are experiencing these problems. We've got this turnover issue, or people are just not as creative or productive as we want, and we can't figure it out. I would love to talk to you. So you can just grab a Spark session, which is a 15-minute phone call. So we'll just talk on the phone, I will talk to you from my actual real life phone, and we'll go through in 15 minutes and figuring out what's working and what isn't, what might be the joy gap where you are, and uncovering the most pressing problem that is suppressing your productivity, that is creating turnover and making retention difficult. What part of that is the problem? And then identify what's next for you as a leader in your team and see what is the next best step. And you can get that right here, right there at jenwhitmer.com/spark call. And again, it's a 15-minute phone call, and we'll just kind of dig in a little bit and see how you can create this. How can you create more of this, more joy, our something greater than ourselves, a deep connection to that, because that is going to bring you these amazing business outcomes, as well as what it feel like to have joy at work again. It is possible. So make sure you grab a Spark call. It's a 15-minute call, and I would love to talk to you more. Next week, we are going to have an amazing guest. Her name is Roberta Moore. She is an emotional intelligence expert. She is a delight of a human and has a really deep story, because one of the things about joy and her own joyful self, it is not happy all the time. And she personifies one of my learnings about joy, which is real joy has deep roots. and roots are formed in the dark. And Roberta has fantastic experience as a business leader, as she's a former accountant who now coaches and leadership. And she's going to be fantastic talking about the importance of emotional intelligence. So don't miss next week. We are live every week here at 1 p.m. Eastern. And very soon, I told you last week with Marcel, very soon there's going to be something new coming. So pay attention because I'm going to drop it. I'm dropping little things. When I say it, you're going to go, oh, those were all the Easter eggs, but it's going to be really helpful for you because that's what I want. I want to support you in creating a positive culture with the complex people that you have around you, including yourself. So I will see you next week at 1 p.m. Eastern right here. Bye, everybody.